Canada, my friends in Canada, you guys are going to be in so much trouble because your government has sold off pretty much all of your gold over several decades. You used to have 1,000 tons. You now have a mere 1.5 or so. 1.5 tons. While allegedly the U.S. has over 8,000 tons. And then we have Maine makes welfare recipients work for it. Guess what happens next? According to InfoWars, that's an interesting article. In other words, you need handouts. You want welfare? Yep. Well, we've got some jobs for you to work at. Let's see how that goes. But first, this is a 2-for-1 video. Canada sells off large chunks of its gold reserves by Monique Muis. What is this? Editor's note. A previous version of the story reported that half of gold reserves had been sold off in early 2016, leaving 1.7 tons in the vaults by the beginning of February. Those numbers were based on International Monetary Fund statistics released February 4th. The IMF figures dated from late December, however, and additional sales were conducted through January, dropping the reserves to 0.62 tons. Global News regrets the confusion caused. The government of Canada sold off large chunks of its gold reserves in recent weeks, continuing a pattern of moving away from the precious metal as a government asset. According to the International Monetary Fund's International Financial Statistics, Canada held 3 tons of gold as of late 2015. That's just saddening. The latest data published last week by the Department of Finance show that the total Canadian gold reserves have now dropped to 0.62 tons. That's less than 0.1% of the country's total reserves, which also include foreign currency deposits and bonds. In comparison, the U.S. holds, again allegedly, 8,133 tons of gold, while the United Kingdom weighs in at 310 tons. The decision to sell came from Finance Minister Bill Morneau's office. Quote, I love this guy, Finance Minister. Canada's gold reserves belong to the government of Canada. I thought it belonged to the people. People are the... No? Okay. And are held under the name of the Minister of Finance, explained a spokesperson for the Bank of Canada on Wednesday. Quote, decisions relative to gold holdings are taken by the Minister of Finance. End quote. Reached by Global News on Wednesday evening, a spokesperson for the Finance Department said the sale, quote, was done in the normal course of business for the government. The decision to sell the gold was not tied to a specific gold price, and sales are being conducted over a long period and in a controlled manner, end quote. This latest sell-off is indeed part of a much longer-term pattern of moving away from gold as a government-held asset, according to economist Ian Lee of the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, Ottawa, has no real reason to keep gold reserves other than adhering to tradition. That is a page out of Ben Bernanke's book when he was grilled by Ron Paul. Why? If gold isn't useful anymore, why do you central banks stockpile so much of it? That's just tradition. Finance Minister from Canada just took a page out of Ben Bernanke's book there. Quote, under the old system, gold backed up currencies, Lee explained. The U.S. dollar was tied to gold. 1 ounce was worth $35. Then, in 1971, for lots of reasons I won't get into, Richard Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. Gold and silver dollars were interchangeable until that point, he said, but in the modern financial world, the metal is no longer considered a form of currency. Could have fooled me by the price action today. The amount of gold the Canadian government holds, missed a spot, Quote, it is a precious metal, like silver. They can be sold like any asset. The amount of gold the Canadian government holds has therefore been falling steadily since the mid-1960s, when over 1,000 tons were kept tucked away. Half of those reserves were sold by 1985. Isn't that interesting that half were sold during a period when gold was skyrocketing, right? And I'm pretty sure the club needed some gold back then to deal with it. And then, so half of those reserves were sold by 1985, and then almost all the rest were sold through the 1990s up to 2002, when gold was looking kind of low, right? Remember that $250 for gold? It's now $1,250. By last year, Canada's reserves were down to just 3 tons, and the latest sales have now carved that back by over 60%. At the current market rate, the value of 0.62 tons of gold comes in at just over 38 million Canadian dollars. Barely a drop in the bucket when you consider the broader scope of federal finances. Quote, it gives them more strategic flexibility to sell the gold, take the money, and invest in U.S. government bonds or United Kingdom bonds or French bonds or German bonds, Lee said. Ooh, not a good idea. What a shame. Let's go to a different story, shall we? Maine makes welfare recipients work for it. Guess what happens next, according to InfoWars? Welfare is the left's favorite entitlement, because if they keep you dependent on the government, you'll have to vote for them over and over again. It's brilliant, really. In Maine, they tried something different. Sometimes families need help, but if you're single, able-bodied, and want to live on the taxpayer's dime, get on out of there. Don't even think about messing with my green screen. Able-bodied and want to live on the taxpayer's dime, then they're going to make you work for it. Uh-oh, he says. The results are not at all shocking if you have any common sense. Job openings for lower-skilled workers are abundant in Maine, and for those ABAWD recipients who cannot find immediate employment, Maine offers both training and community service slots. But despite vigorous outreach efforts by the government to encourage participation, most childless adult recipients in Maine refuse to participate in training or even to perform community service for 6 hours per week. When ABAWD recipients refuse to participate, their food stamps benefits ceased. Maine? Yes. In the first 3 months after Maine's work policy went into effect, its caseload of able-bodied adults without dependents plummeted by 80%, falling from over 13,000 to 2,600 plus in March 2015. So let me get this straight, it says. Able-bodied young men or women have been receiving a free ride from the government in Maine for a long time now. Conservatives often bemoan the leftist welfare state. In turn, leftists state that conservatives are just mean, who want to kick people who are down on their luck and keep all those monies for all of themselves. Conservatives respond with the novel concept that they believe people should earn their living, and that many welfare recipients are perfectly capable of doing so. Leftists respond with, nuh-uh, top 1%. But when directly put into practice in Maine, conservatives are proven to be entirely correct, as able-bodied adults refuse to perform even a minimal amount of work, remember, 6 hours for the whole damn week, to receive their once free welfare checks. It's almost like these people deserve to be unemployed. Now compare this whole experiment to Europe, where welfare recipients are encouraged to have more sex, and others complain that the welfare isn't enough. Also, Europe is riddled with rape, crime, and financial ruin. Maybe Maine is on to something. Now, that is interesting. Because I was honestly not expecting, when I read that, to find that, oh, you want welfare? You got to work. Even basic jobs, we'll train you and show you how to do, it's easy. You only have to do it there's a small amount of time per week even. Everyone else is working 40 hours. We just need you 6 hours. I don't want to come into work. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Do you want your welfare check? Of course. You can't come in for 6 hours for the entire week? Yeah, not going to be able to make it. Don't like that. However, they didn't still get to keep their welfare check. They got it cut off. So you'd have to ask, well, where did they go? What did they do? Not getting a welfare check anymore. You don't want to work for your money, so now what? Answer to that is, I don't know. Maybe they went out and found a real job in a hurry because they realized, well, if I'm going to work anyways, I might as well go get a better job that pays more. But at the same time, their mind was already at, well, I want welfare money, so therefore I don't want to get a job. So when they said, we only need you 6 hours a week, wouldn't the average welfare mindset tell you, oh, well, I can do that. I don't want to work, but damn, 6 hours for the whole week? I'm getting a welfare check. Yeah, it's worth 6 hours a week. You kidding me? And they still wouldn't do it. These are the zombies out there. These are the zombies who are allowed to vote. I wonder how they're going to vote. Oh, this is excruciating.